Thanksgiving. Have you heard of it? Yes. Every year at Thanksgiving, people around the country write to me saying that they read aloud to their family my book on Squanto and the first Thanksgiving. I'm going to be talking about that in just a moment. Hey there, folks. Welcome to the show. I always want to start with getting something off my chest. I am, and if you're guilty of this, there's forgiveness, there's grace, there's repentance. But I am off the charts disgusted seeing Christmas decorations, decorated trees before Thanksgiving. It's like a satanic fungus. Every year it creeps forward inch by inch, closer and closer to choke us. What is going on? You know, Christmas used to start, on Christmas Eve. Then it started a week before Christmas. Then it started, in early December. And then it started December 1st. And I thought, what is happening? It's insane. This year, for the first time ever, to my true astonishment, I've been seeing Christmas stuff everywhere before Thanksgiving. One of the reasons that's wrong, morally and on every other level, is that you're kind of pushing away one of the greatest holidays that we have ever celebrated in America. It is uniquely American, which of course Christmas is not. I'm talking about Thanksgiving. The story of Thanksgiving, there's tons to it that I won't even go into right now. But I want to focus on, in my new book on the American Revolution, in my book, If You Can Keep It, and in other places, I talk about the uniqueness of America, God's hand in America. We who believe in the God of the Bible believe that God moves in history. Things don't just happen and he's kind of there, but actually that God moves in history. And sometimes you see that very clearly. I did not see that really until the early 90s. I was working for Rabbit Ears, which is a company that produced children's videos. And somebody said, we're going to do a series on America and American folk tales and, stuff and whatever. And somebody says, Eric, you should write the story of Squanto. I was like, I don't really know the story of Squanto. So I go to the Westport, Connecticut library to take out books. Now, back in those days, they had actual books in libraries. And I took out all these books, try to piece together, what is the story of Squanto? And what I found astonished me. I found that most movie versions or whatever versions, kids' book versions, did not really deal with the most important fact of the story. And this is what you happen in a secular culture where people kind of push God out. When God reveals himself in a story, they go, we can't really talk about that. That makes us uncomfortable. It's confusing. We have to remove the God thesis. So we're just going to remove that and tell the story without God, which is everybody's right. But the problem is there's sometimes when a story has God so central to it that if you push God out, you're distorting the story. And so I did the research on the story of Squanto, which is the story of our first Thanksgiving in 1621. And I couldn't believe what I was reading. I was reading the original documents. In other words, we're talking about William Bradford, who came over on the Mayflower in 1620, wrote about what happened. And there are a few other documents. There's one strange one called Mort's Relation. You can look it up, M-O-U-R-T, Mort's Relation. There's just a handful of documents where you can piece together the Squanto story. But when you piece it together and you listen to the words of William Bradford, you say, this is a flat out miracle. I don't know how else to read the story. This is just a miracle, a crazy miracle from God. Like never happens, but when it happens, you say it happened. It's a miracle. So I wrote a book called Squanto and the Miracle of Thanksgiving. Oh, maybe I have a copy here to show you. Yes. Because I said somebody needs to tell the story in a way that everybody can understand it, including kids. But I also told a story in my book, I was going to say Fish Out of Water. No, I didn't. In my book, If You Can Keep It, of course, is a book for, high school to adult can understand it. But I said, I got to tell the story anytime I get the chance to tell the story, because it's crazy and it's true and it shows God's hand in American history. So what is the story briefly? Okay. This is so amazing. I never understand how to tell the story. We all know that the Pilgrims arrived 1620, okay, on the Mayflower. But I always kind of had this idea that it's like the landing on the moon. Nobody's been there before. I mean, the Pilgrims show up, that nobody was there before. That's not true. Nobody had settled before. Certainly nobody had settled north of Virginia, Jamestown, 1607. But there had been people there, traders who would come, ships that would come, via Greenland, Iceland. They're kind of coming up and down to Newfoundland and down the coast of Maine and what is today Massachusetts, who'd trade with the Indians. There were a few of those who would do that, but you don't hear much about it because, they're just traders trying to make a buck. And about 1605, a ship came to the coast of what is today Massachusetts to actually, back then it would have been Patuxet Village. This is where the Patuxets, the native tribe called the Patuxets, lived at the base of the Cape. Actually, today we call it Plymouth, Massachusetts. So a ship comes in 1605. The Native Americans come down to the water to trade with these white men. And of course, as you know, some people are not so nice. The captain of this ship thought, you know what? These Native Americans would fetch a big price on the slave market in Europe. So what do? They whack them over the head. They drag them to the ship. They put them in the hold of the ship as prisoners. They sail to Malaga, Spain, and sell this group of Native Americans into slavery. This happens about 1605. Well, long story short, one of these Indians, who's maybe 11 years old at the time, Tisquantum, they called him Squanto, he is purchased, it seems, by a group of friars, Christian men of God, who, by all accounts, treat him very well, teach him the Christian religion, and then somehow arrange for his freedom to get back home. Now, this would be like you're stranded on the moon. Hey, when's the next spaceship going back? How about never? There like almost no. So he is in Europe, in Spain. He somehow, nobody knows how, makes his way, whether with the help of the friars, we don't know, but makes his way to London because, of course, that would be where ships are going from to go back to the New World to do trading. So he seems to spend 5 years in Spain, maybe 5 years in London. Now think of this. So he's in London while Victoria is queen, while Shakespeare is writing plays. This is about the time that what's his name? Rolfe, comes from Virginia with Pocahontas. It's hard for us to imagine this mixing of cultures. In any event, somehow Squanto manages, he works for 5 years with a family as like a stable hand in London, and then is able to trade his skills as a guide and an interpreter of Indian language to go across with a trading ship. So this is about 10 years after he has been captured. Or it's actually, no, it's more than that. It's like 1619, I think, that this happens. Okay. So he's on his way back. Meanwhile, in 1620, as we know, the Pilgrims go across. They land in what is today Plymouth, Massachusetts. They suffer horribly. When you hear this kind of stuff, it doesn't compute. They are following God. They land there. Half of them die. Let's think about that for a second. Mothers die, fathers die, children die. 50 out of 100 die, and they bury them. It doesn't get more bleak than that. they get through that winter. So in 1621, it's as dark as it gets. Did we go back? Have we failed? So now, just to finish the story with Squanto, around this time, he's been coming across, I always forget the details. They're in my book, both books. But he comes across, I think they have to winter in Iceland because they couldn't make it all the way across the Atlantic in time, whatever. So he finally gets to the coast of what we call Maine today, and they're coming down the coast and trading. Finally, they get him to the place from where he has originally come in, I guess it's 1605. You can check my books. I should check my books to see. But it's been all these years. He's been dreaming of going home to his people. He goes home, you can just picture this, runs through the woods to the village, finds the village where he grew up empty. He runs to a neighboring tribe. Now, the neighboring tribes, that's not family. That's a neighboring tribe. But he doesn't know where else to go. He goes and he finds out from the neighboring tribe, oh, yeah, your people were basically wiped out by a plague, whether it's smallpox, whatever it is that the Europeans unintentionally brought over. They had no immunity, wiped out. So he's effectively the last member of the Patuxet tribe. He has no tribe to go home to, so he stays with the other tribe. At some point, it seems that he went to live in the woods alone. It's strange and confusing, but it's sad that he's made it all the way home and then this happens. Well, the Pilgrims, as we were just saying, they've been suffering. So it's 1621. They've been there for a year. You can imagine they're praying and praying and praying, crying out to God, what do you want us to do? Lord, we are dying. We don't know how to survive here in this hostile wilderness. At some point, out of the woods comes a native. His name is Squanto. He greets them. He speaks perfect English because he lived for 5 years in London. While they were in Holland, he was in London. He has nowhere to go. This is where he grew up. They effectively adopt him, and he teaches them everything they need to know about how to survive in this place where he, as a child, grew up. He knows how to get the eels out of the stream beds. He knows everything. He knows most famously how to plant corn and shows them, you put a dead fish in as fertilizer, you plant the beans around. He shows them how to do this. It's absolutely miraculous. All of the Pilgrims know that he is a special instrument sent of God. That's what William Bradford writes in his journal, to deliver them. It's just one of the most crazy, miraculous stories in American history that God sends this boy across the ocean, what man intends for evil. It's like with Joseph in the Old Testament in Genesis. What man intends for evil, God intends for good. Sends him, allows him to go into slavery, then go up to London, and then eventually to get a ship over just in time to deliver the Pilgrims from devastation, death, returning home. It's one, and I'm leaving stuff out. If you read either my book, If You Can Keep It, again, that's the adult version, or the Squanto book, it's just a clear miracle, God's hand in our history. So, of course, Squanto is there to celebrate the first Thanksgiving with them. If it weren't for Squanto, they might not have been there in November of 1621. And just to finish the story, that the success of the Pilgrims, who were extraordinary Christians, encouraged others to come over. Obviously, 9 years later on the Arbella, Governor John Winthrop, and all of those who come to plant the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and Harvard College in 1634, and the whole colony and all of that stuff. And then Squanto was able to broker a deal with the native tribes around there. And it was the longest peace between English settlers and the natives that ever existed. Basically 50 years of peace before the horror of King Philip's War. And so the whole thing is just, out of a storybook, except it actually happened. It is American history, and it seems to me the clearest evidence we have of God's hand in our history, in our founding, which was specifically Christian, because all of those who came over during that time were just, it's not like Jamestown. These folks were there because of their faith in Jesus. It's amazing. It's at the heart of our story. And I'll leave it there, but happy Thanksgiving. God bless you. You need to know the true story of Squanto and the miracle of Thanksgiving. Now you know most of it. God bless you.
Hey there, folks. As hard as it may be for us to believe, especially if we're in America, there are people in other parts of the world who have literally been enslaved because of their faith in Jesus Christ. Some of them for decades. Hundreds of thousands of them have been persecuted and enslaved in the Sudan. Together, right now, we can literally buy their freedom and save the lives of some precious brothers and sisters, give them the joy and hope we celebrate so freely. For only $250, you can provide life-saving aid this Christmas. You can buy a believer's freedom and provide them with much-needed food, a goat, and other necessary goods for their survival. Brothers and sisters enslaved and fearing for their lives, just $250. Maybe you can give more. Maybe you can just give a portion of that. Every gift helps. Imagine buying the freedom of a fellow Christian believer. You can do it. Call 888-253-3522, 888-253-3522. Christian Solidarity International provides life-saving resources for persecuted Christians for almost 40 years, 888-253-3522, or go to ericmetaxas.com and click on the banner. You'll see it, ericmetaxas.com. Click on the banner. Please give someone the gift of getting their life back. Provide life and freedom for someone right now. God bless you.
Hey there, folks. I promised you that I would bring my friend William Federer on the program. And if you've listened to this program many years or you've gotten to know me personally, you realize I'm a liar. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? I just say stuff. Unfortunately, William Federer has turned me into a liar. Now, he's never done that before, but he just did it because he told us he could not join us right now. He had to have some kind of a hair treatment or so, I don't know. It's one of those things. But I thought, William, can one of your colleagues help us? Can somebody and guess what? We got somebody hard to believe, but it's true, as wonderful as William Federer. It is my friend Jerry Newcombe, who's been on the program before. He is the executive director of the Providence Forum, which is part of Coral Ridge Ministries. You remember Coral Ridge Ministries, Dr. James Kennedy. And today we have Jerry Newcombe. Jerry, welcome back.
Thank you, Eric. Great to be with you.
You are so much better than William Federer. I would never say that on the air. I would never say that. But
hey, we had Bill Federer at our church just on Saturday talking about Thanksgiving. It was great.
Yeah, it breaks my heart. I think what I was just saying, I was just telling the story of Squanto, which I don't know if I mentioned it to my audience, but I wrote a children's book called Squanto and the Miracle of Thanksgiving, which obviously you can purchase. And I wrote a book for adults called If You Can Keep It, The Forgotten Promise of American Liberty. And if you can keep it, I tell the full story of Squanto in there because it really dramatically underscores God's hand in the founding of America. And I remember when I discovered the story of Squanto, I couldn't believe it. I said, how have I missed this? Or how have others missed this? Because there are other versions of the story of Squanto. They kind of forget that it's miraculous or that's not possible for them. So they just say, oh, it's this great coincidence. This Indian wanders out of the woods. He just happens to have been from the very place where the Pilgrims had settled. He just happens to have nothing else to do with his life. He just happens to know how to survive in that very place and just happens to volunteer himself. Oh, and he just happens to speak perfect English. I mean, the whole thing is crazy. Yeah. And so if you're solving for X, ladies and gentlemen, X is God. there's no other reasonable explanation, or at least I would say that's the most plausible explanation. But there's some people who just go, yeah, we can't go there. So when I discovered the story of Squanto, I said, I got to write this as a children's book to tell everybody. Most people don't know. Most Christians don't know. I think in the 26 years since my book has been out there, a lot of folks have read it and they kind of gotten to know it. And I've told the story many times. But I think it's important for us, with the 250th supercentennial next year happening, to remind ourselves that God's hand has been centrally involved in our history, in our history, which of course has we have a checkered history. We were not perfect when we came out of the womb in 1776, but God's been working on us, and it's important to acknowledge that.
It is important to acknowledge that. And I think you're exactly right. With Squanto, he's an example where the Pilgrims, once they got to meet him and everything, they felt, wow, God has sent him as a special instrument to help us survive. And he was the one who translated for them this treaty of peace that they made with the Indians. That treaty of peace lasted longer than any of them were alive. So it outlasted all of them. It was one of the longest treaties of peace. And the Pilgrims were so good the way they treated everybody, including the Native Americans. And here Squanto helped them survive. But when you talk about America's true story, you can ignore the God factor, but in reality, that's the essence of it. I mean, at one point during the Revolutionary War, George Washington said, wow, anybody who is not willing to give thanks to God for what he's been doing for us and helping us to become independent, they're worse than an infidel and very ungrateful.
Actually, I forgot about that quote. Worse than an infidel and ungrateful. When did Washington say that? Do you remember?
Yes,
because that is
1778. He said it in a letter to Thomas Nelson Jr., who was one of his military associates. And the gist of it is that we should be grateful. And by the way, in his first inaugural address, George Washington also reminded people, he said, no people should be more grateful than the people of the United States that we are independent. Every step along the way, we've been the beneficiaries of the signal purposes of providence and so forth. Providence is just an old-fashioned Baroque way of saying God, the God who answers prayer.
During the horrors of the Holocaust, Corrie ten Boom and her Dutch family, as told in her classic book, The Hiding Place, risked everything to shelter Jewish neighbors in their home. They were betrayed and sent to concentration camps, yet Corrie survived and went on to preach forgiveness and hope around the world. That same redemptive spirit lives on in 10 Boom Coffee. Working with Agro Cafe, an Israeli ag tech company, 10 Boom Coffee helps farmers around the world increase their harvests by 60%, improving both the quality of their beans and the quality of their lives. So every cup you pour becomes part of a legacy, one that stands for courage, kindness, and redemption. Visit 10boomcoffee.com. That's 10boomcoffee.com. Taste the goodness that changes lives. Use the code ERIC and save 10%. 10boomcoffee.com. Use the code ERIC.
It's interesting because in my research on the revolution, my book will come out, I guess, probably May or June of next year. But in the research, it's very similar to what I encountered in researching the story of Squanto, which is to say that most writers, historians have a secular leaning, and they don't understand. I mean, sometimes they're openly hostile to a Christian explanation, but sometimes they're just a little baffled and they kind of avoid it. And I think that Ken Burns's documentary really suffers from that. I don't think it's intentional, but you can't tell the truth if you push that out. It's confusing. It's a little depressing. The whole story is kind of dreary. It's not exciting and beautiful. And I think I forget his first name, Ellis, the historian.
Joseph Ellis.
Joseph Ellis also rather pointedly asserts that, these were Enlightenment deists. These were not Christians. And I think I have done the research. I have done the research, and that is wrong.
It
Most
is
of them
wrong.
were dramatically Christian.
You remember Michael Novak? I'm sorry for interrupting.
Absolutely, of
Okay,
course.
you remember Michael Novak of the American Enterprise Institute? He once said, look, you got to look at it this way. When you use that term enlightenment, it's like an umbrella term. But he said that there's more than the unbelieving side of the Enlightenment. There's more than Diderot and Voltaire and David Hume. The other side of it is John Locke is included as an Enlightenment thinker. Well, his second treatise on government was very important to the Founding Fathers, and there's many allusions and references to God. Sir William Blackstone, also an Enlightenment thinker. He's the one who talks about the laws of nature and of nature's God. And in this fallen world, God, who has revealed himself in nature, he's supplemented his revelation because we're fallen with the Holy Scriptures. And no human law should suffer violation of either the natural law or the laws of God. I mean, these kinds of things were quoted by the Founding Fathers. The Founding Fathers quoted the Bible more than 4 times more than any human author. And then as far as the human authors, it's 3 Christian thinkers who are often categorized as Enlightenment. That is Montesquieu, Blackstone, and John Locke in that order.
You know, this reminds me, I'm glad you just put it the way you did, because it reminds me of, I discovered the same secular bias when it comes to science. When I wrote my book, Is Atheism Dead?, I realized that modern science as we know it, was created, founded, brought into being by Christians. Every single one of these titans of science were profound Christians. And it's only when you get to, the middle of the 19th century that it begins to go sideways and to take this hostile secular tilt that suddenly to be scientific is to be anti-faith. And you think, wait a minute, you're confusing things. Most of the most dedicated giants in the world of science were dedicatedly Christian. And so you see the same thing when we're talking about the Enlightenment and Enlightenment thinkers. People want to talk about Diderot or Hume or what. They don't want to talk about John Locke when it comes to this. They sort of make it an either or. John Adams wrote an amazing essay in 1765 called A Dissertation on the Canon and Feudal Law. Very few people know about it. I discovered it and I thought, wow, he deals with this in that. I devote a whole chapter in my book to this because he basically says our desire for knowledge, for learning, for understanding is fundamentally Christian. When the Puritans came over to Massachusetts, founded Massachusetts Bay Colony, 4 years after the ship gets here in 1630, they start Harvard College because they know, and this comes right out of the Reformation, folks, we all need to know the Bible. It's not enough to just do what we're told the priest said to do. We all need to read the Bible, understand the Bible, teach the Bible, understand the ideas behind the Bible. All of this comes out of Christian faith, out of the Reformation. And it's so fascinating to me to have these secular voices like Joseph Ellis say, no. They were all deists. They didn't believe in the hand of God. And it's like, listen, that's really not fair. If you want to be intellectually honest, you can't say that. And I think that it's something that we have to correct. And so it's important for me that you just said what you said, because there is this confusion that people, when they hear enlightenment, it's like when they hear science, they think that means anti-faith, anti-God. In many cases, it does not. But they've been sold that, no, you got to choose. It's either faith or it's science. It's either evidence or faith. It's like, no. That's a diabolical confusion. The reality is that there were people of the Enlightenment, whether it's Ben Franklin or even Jefferson, who really did believe that God's hand works. Maybe they were on the farthest end of that, but they were nothing like hostile to the God of the Bible, to God's hand in history. And so all of this stuff has to be corrected. And I think we're in a season, Jerry, where that is being corrected. People are beginning to see God's hand in American history, God's hand in the founders, and how central it was to everything that they did. It's kind of a beautiful moment we're in suddenly. Folks, listen, if you've been injured in an accident or someone you love has been, this is something you really need to hear. I've been talking with the team over at Legal Help Center, and they're absolutely committed to helping people just like you understand your rights and figure out what your case may truly be worth. And here's what sets them apart. When you choose Legal Help Center, you're getting a free consultation, no upfront costs whatsoever, agents available 24/7, a connection with a qualified local attorney, and clear guidance so you actually understand your rights. In other words, they make the entire process simple, professional, and genuinely helpful. So here's what to do. Call 800-575-9120. That's 800-575-9120. Or go to LegalHelpCenter.com. Find out how much money you may qualify for. Don't wait. Don't try to go it alone. Certainly don't attempt to become your own lawyer. Let the professionals at Legal Help Center handle this for you. Legal Help Center, helping you know your rights and what your case is really worth.
I think you're right. I mean, you just mentioned Thomas Jefferson. Well, Thomas Jefferson wrote the first major draft of the Declaration of Independence, which says that our rights come from God. And it talks about the consent of the governed. Self-rule under God is the essence of the American experiment. And the people who really started this more than any single people are the ones who founded Plymouth. When the Mayflower was blown off course, they wrote up an agreement of government, and it became the first step towards what became ultimately 150 years later, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, self-rule under God. They talked about how in the name of God, that's how it begins. They said, we came here for the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian faith. We do covenant and combine ourselves into a civil body politic. So the contribution that the Pilgrims made, this small group, is so incredible. And so with Jefferson, though, 150 years later, yes, he later in life became much more Unitarian in his thinking than Trinitarian, unfortunately. But in the early days, even in 1777, so a year after he wrote the Declaration of Independence, and the same year he wrote the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, which was accepted in 1786. So he actually, as a layman, co-founded an evangelical church. They called an evangelical minister, his name was the Reverend Charles Clay, who was a patriotic pastor ordained in the Anglican tradition and an evangelical. That makes him he was a very small part of the Anglicans, because most were not like that. In a book I co-wrote with Mark Belials called Doubting Thomas, all about Jefferson and his faith or lack thereof, we actually put in print for the first time ever 2 of Charles Clay's sermons. And you read them, this is straightforward gospel preaching. Jefferson, when he wrote up the agreement, the bylaws for that church, the Calvinistical Reformed Church of Charlottesville, which met in the local courthouse, and they called the Reverend Charles Clay, as I say, an evangelical. And he said, we, being desirous of gospel knowledge, are establishing this church. We want the Holy Scriptures expounded to us. So Jefferson, at least at the time of the founding, was Christian-minded. And then you look at Ben Franklin. Yes, he had some doubts about some of the key doctrines and so forth, and yet he also did believe in God and that God answered prayer. You look at his speech at the Constitutional Convention, it's fantastic. He's calling for prayer, and they say that the mood, which was very hostile, they weren't getting along. It was almost like spinning their wheels at the Constitutional Convention. Then finally on June 28, he breaks the logjam by basically saying, the gist of it is, gentlemen, we need to pray. I have lived so a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this, that God governs in the affairs of men. And if a sparrow cannot fall without his notice, can an empire rise without his aid? We have been assured, sir, in the sacred writings that except the Lord build a house, they that labor in vain. And then he called for prayer, and a variation of his request for prayer was adopted. They did meet together in a church a few days later, and a beautiful service. And so we've tried to include these things in our different films and so forth. And by the way, I thank you, Eric Metaxas. You gave me an interview for a few minutes several years ago, and that became part of this film series that I've made for Providence Forum called The Foundation of American Liberty. And so as you say, you cannot tell America's true history and leave God out of it.
Well, where can people find that documentary? Where can people find you? Because I know that people want more on this subject.
Sure, providenceforum.org. And the name of the series I made is called it's a 7-part, 1-hour documentaries with lots of bonus footage. And it's the Foundation of American Liberty series. I always try and make that the kind of the first post you see at providenceforum.org. And I even divided the stuff up into little 5-minute chunks. I know a lot of people don't have a lot of attention span these days. So you can see these little things. Oh, okay, here's the Pilgrims and Socialism. Oh, here's Ben Franklin Saved the Day. That deals with that.
So at providenceforum.org, providenceforum.org. Well, Jerry Newcombe, I'm just so glad William Federer couldn't make it today because we know we'll have him back soon, but we got to talk to you. This is a joy. Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving. God bless you. God bless America. Good to see you.
You too. Thank you and happy Thanksgiving. God bless.
This Christmas, as we celebrate the Super Centennial coming up, Super Centennial 250th, there's no way, better way to support it than by supporting my friend, an American hero, Mike Lindell. He's one of the main sponsors on this program. He's the man behind My Pillow. He put his money where his mouth is. Some of you know this if you've watched the program. He stood up for the country. He was unfairly canceled by the big box stores. So I want us to stand with him. So please go to mypillow.com. Use the promo code ERIC to save big on pillows, sheets, slippers, everything you need for Christmas comfort. You'll sleep great, save big, celebrate freedom with My Pillow. Mypillow.com. Use the code ERIC.